Hi everybody. Firstly, I apologise. I cannot for the life of me get my video going today, and I'm not trying to hide behind a blank screen. Trust me. So, just first call for apologies. None?
Have we got Bruce Fawala, Councillor Fawala here?
Yes.
We have?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any declarations of interest? Any urgent business? And people in the public gallery, who have we got? We've got the media, we've got Richard there, I see, and a few of the council staff, so welcome guys. We're starting today with item number 1, which is on page 7, and it is an item for our committee's information, and it is management account report from Sharon. Is Sharon here? Or will you be handling that, John?
Talking to that, please, Ken. Yeah, or your chair.
Okay, John.
Yeah. Okay, so if we go to page 8, which is the statement of financial position, if you look on the right-hand side of that, you see that the rates, receivables and payments fluctuates as we invoice and collect our rates, so it's cyclical. But the one to note is our other financial assets, which is our investment portfolio, and you'll see that that's gone down from February to March by quite a large amount. That's really the impact of the share market due to COVID. If you go down to the work in progress line, you'll see that we've spent about 13.5 million on building our assets year to date. If you have a look under the borrowings, for the long-term side, you'll see that the LGFO loan is 5 million. Just remember that in April, we borrowed another 4 million. So that, don't think I made a mistake. That's just in March. April hasn't been done yet. So those are my comments on the statement of financial position. Are there any questions, or shall I go on?
Any questions for John, guys? No, carry on, John.
Okay, so if we go down to page 9, so this is the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenditure, and you'll see how the rates comes in every quarter. You'll see that overall our revenue is down compared to budget, and the main reason for that is the NZTA claim timing and for the subsidy. So and that's partly due to timing, because we haven't done that during the shutdown, and also secondly due to the lower activity because we couldn't operate. The other thing that's of interest, if you look at the interest revenue amount, it's 377. It's not a minus, it's a debit. So that reflects the losses that we've incurred on the portfolio due to COVID. I mean, we did very well on our other fees, mainly because of the Mount Kui revenue that flowed through. On the expenditure side, we're not too badly out overall there. It's really mainly under the operating expenditure, where we've had some higher operational costs, mainly in the water contract, and we've had some unbudgeted sampling costs, and we've had some legal fees that we didn't budget for. Personnel costs, more or less, it's actually slightly over. Depreciation is not 100% accurate because we haven't capitalized all the work in progress, and we'll only really do that at year end. So the bottom line is, it doesn't look good on the bottom line because we've missed out really on the NZTA funding. So that's all.
John. We have got a couple of questions. Yep. Michelle, for a start off. Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Just, John, the dog registration side of it, will that always never marry up anyway?
Yeah. So I think when they did the budgeting, they overestimated the number of dogs at the rate. So we had a higher budget and the actuals are lower. So we're going to correct that in the next annual plan.
Okay. Thank you.
And Your Worship, you have a question.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. John, under the Treasury Advisory Service report in this morning's audit and risk, the plimsoll line around our breach was 5 million, And yet I've just been reading now, LGFA loan, it's 5,020,000. Is that right?
No, that's total borrowings.
Yeah, but it is now. If it was over 5 million, it was a breach. We were saying, well, it is 5 million, but it's not. It's 5,020,000. Am I right?
Yeah, but there's another long-term liability in there, Brian. I think that might have to do. I can't even remember. It's there was another long-term liability besides the LGFA.
Is that the loan? We had a $20,000 loan, and you're managing somewhere else.
Yes, I think that's where it came from. I'm not sure, Brian. I'll have to check. But yeah, but it's 5 million, which is LGFA, and there could be 20,000 from somewhere else. But just remember that in that 5 million, we've also got an investment, because we also have a small shareholding that every time we borrow, we invest in the LGFA.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? Okay. And look, if I miss somebody, can you just please wave your hand or something on the screen so I can see you? But we have a recommendation there now, and it's that the Corporate and Property Committee receive the Management and Accounts report. We've got somebody prepared to move. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, John. Moved and seconded. All those in favour, please raise your hands.
I can't get mine to raise.
It's
having
pretty
trouble.
unanimous anyway. So thank you very much, everybody. It passed. Item number 2 on the, if you can lower your hands now, for item number 2 on the agenda, of course, is the investment portfolio. So again, Greg Bowie, have we got Greg with us today?
No, I'm standing in for
John's
Greg.
going to do that too. So thank you, John.
Okay, so if we go to page 11, and if you have a look at the change for each month, you'll see how the portfolio was starting to be affected in February and by 454,000 and 2,010,000 in March. So that's the effect of the COVID pandemic on the numbers. And so but overall, despite all of this, we're still sitting at a 1.96% return positively compared to our 5% budget. And we had Ben Trollope from Melville Jessup Weaver on the Audit and Risk Committee, or the Risk and Assurance Committee today, who sort of spoke about the market, and he said that I think there was a 28% recovery compared to the lowest point in March, and they've got about 13% more on the market to go to the peak that it was. So if you have a look at that, we've probably recovered 2/3 of where we were, as we are today. So I'll take that as read unless there are questions. So we don't have any breaches on our borrowing.
All right. Thank you, John. Questions for John, team? No. Oh, one from Your Worship. Okay. Your Worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, I think that it should be noted that the plus and minuses that you were talking about were actually unrealised, but what we did end up for the end of the year and the actual tangible figure was a gain of 511,000. And that is the figure that we should be noting from a council perspective, because that actually materialised. The rest were just a snapshot in time.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, these are totally unrealized losses. And as per our strategy about a long-term view, we're just keeping the share portfolio as it is, and the market is recovering. So we're all hoping that it actually recovers and goes further, but we're still thinking that it might be a little bit flat by the time we get to year end.
Any further questions? Thank you, John. I personally think that's an outstanding result, so thank you very much for that. So again, we've got another recommendation, and I'm just sorting through my papers here. Sorry, guys, I'm getting a bit lost. I'll with you in a minute. Yeah, a recommendation that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the investment portfolio update. So can you have a mover and seconder for that, please? Councillor Ludeman and Councillor Cowie, thank you guys. All those in favour, please say aye. And that is unanimous, so thank you very much. Moving right along, item number 3, the Library Services Centre report.
Page
And
44.
have we got Lorna here today with us? No, we haven't. John, will you be taking that again?
Karen, I don't know if Lorna is coming.
I don't see her.
Where's Karen?
Karen?
Sorry, I
Karen
keep
is there, yes.
I keep losing the mute button. I did invite Lorna, but she hasn't got back to me, so she may not have got the invitation. So presume that she's not coming.
Okay, all right. So, so what we've got here is not a full report like we would normally give. It's a bit reduced, and that's just because we haven't had people coming to visit us or issuing books and stuff like that. So, I hope I'll be able to answer any questions that come from the floor on this.
Thanks, John. Councillors, any questions for John?
Bruce, Vicky's not here.
The report only lasted for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, but you should have read it. Yeah.
Okay, well, doesn't look as though we've got any questions at this stage. It would have been I don't personally know Lorna, so it would have been nice to meet her, but nevertheless, another recommendation that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Library Service Centre's reports. And we have a mover and a seconder. Councillor Graham, thank you, and Councillor Foster, thank you very much. All those in favour? Great, that's unanimous again. Thank you very much. Item number 4. We are hauling through this today. And this is the Corporate Services Report. Perhaps, Karen, would you like to speak to this?
I haven't really got anything else to add to this. There was, well, technically there was no ANZAC funding, but we have had an application in from one of the RSAs that did have did go ahead and buy a wreath. So I'll talk to His Worship to see if we can go ahead and reimburse that. Telford Bursary, I've just slid back for a month because Lisa Snell at Telford still, will have to get the information out to the students, which she has done. And the rates rebate, because Pauline and Bronwyn have not been able to pick up or get the rates rebate applications, none have been actioned.
Okay, any questions for Karen? Bruce 1, Councillor Volweiler.
What?
Sorry, Karen, regarding the rates rebate there, can people apply any time during the year and get that, or do they sort of have to apply before the start of a financial year?
I'll throw that over to you, John.
I think they can apply during the year because I know Bronwyn and them process it during the year, but I'm not 100%. I can send a quick email and get back to you.
Yeah, it's just, I guess we probably should be putting out some messaging to our community about the availability of rates rebate, and it's just whether they have to have applied before the start of the next financial year to get the rebate, or whether they can actually get that at any time during the year. That's just what I'm wondering, how we can do that messaging, make sure we get the best advantage of it for our community.
Thank you, Bruce. Bruce number 2 then, I guess.
Yeah,
Councillor Graham.
Thank you, Ken. Just on the South Tago Historical Society, on the reimbursement of council fees, is that the old butcher shop, is that the one that Rex has got?
Okay, so there was some real confusion around that. On the application, and from what I understood, it was the South Otago Historical Society. It's not. It's actually the South Otago Heritage Society. So I've had to ask for a refund from the South Otago Historical Society so that we can pay the correct people.
Right. So, but is it the butcher shop out towards Melbourne?
Yes.
That it is that. So
Yes.
is that because he just used to run it himself, didn't he? Has it been taken over by the Heritage Society?
From what I can understand, it's the Heritage Society that are putting that project together.
Right. Right, because I'd thought that he had actually built that up himself and it was sort of like a private concern and he'd open up if you wanted to have a look. But maybe he's got to a stage where that he's handed it over to them. Maybe one of the Milton councillors might know something about that, or no?
Council.
Always a private thing.
Sorry, Carol.
It was always a private thing. Originally.
I had my hand up. I
Yes.
just wonder.
I was going to
if he has
Councillor
actually-
Finch next.
Thank you. I just wonder if he has actually sold the property to them, because if he hasn't actually sold the property, wouldn't that make a difference? It's still on his piece of land. So would that make a difference to them getting a rates rebate if Rex still owns the land?
I'll go to John Scott. As you see, he's got his hand up. He may be able to answer some of that, and he may have a comment anyway. So, John.
Sorry, I was answering Bruce's original question.
Right.
On the rates rebate. I wasn't, I don't know about the butcher.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's on private land, unless he's subdivided it off and sold it since he lost choice. That's something that we should find out, should we not, before we pay it out?
Councillor Volweiler, you've got your hand up. Have you got a suggestion?
I'm not aware of any building activity having occurred on the site of Rex's Butchers Museum, but I know the Heritage Society has been doing work at the showgrounds, and I wonder if, I can't answer, but I'm just wondering if they're moving the museum to the showgrounds, or behind the showgrounds there. That might be what's been happening.
Now, I've got 4 hands up. If you've already spoken and don't want to speak again, I've got Finch, Scott, and Councillor Graham all with the hands up. Do any of you want to speak again?
Yeah.
Right.
Just in reply to Gaynor, it's not a rates, it's a building consent. So it probably hasn't got too much to do with selling of the land or who owns the land, because it's building consent fees, not rates.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. John, have you got a comment?
Yes. So I got a reply from Pauline. Yes, you can apply for the rates rebate at any time during the rating year, provided you own the property at the 1st of July. So, Bruce?
That answer your question, Bruce?
Thanks very much for that. That does.
Thank you. Have we got another question, Councillor Graham?
No, sorry, just a bit tardy on putting my hand down.
And John, I'll get you. Oh, yeah. Karen Pesci, have you got a question as well?
How about I look into this a wee bit more once I get the refund and do a bit more digging and just see what the real story is, and I can report back to the next meeting on this one.
Thank you, Karen. Your Worship.
Thank you, Chair. Just yesterday when I went down the street, I was talking to had the first opportunity to talk to business owners, and none of them were aware of any rates rebate or any decision that we've made around alleviating the pressure they're under. I just wonder if we need to get that message out through Sue, or specifically targeting the businesses, because they've just gone through a 6-week cash flow crisis. And while we have made consideration for them, the messaging obviously hasn't hit home.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Sutherland, have you got a question just before we...
It was just a quick one. did we get the money back? Did we send the money to the Historical Society or not? Was it originally sent there?
Who's going to answer that, John or Karen?
Am I on mute? No, I'm not on mute. Yes, it has gone to the South Otago Historical Society. I have asked for a refund, but I haven't heard back from them yet, so we'll be following that up.
So was that long ago? Or?
No, that was just last week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Councillor Cowie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, everybody. Well, I got my rates yesterday, and there is a very informative piece of paper with it, which explains most things about paying your rates. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Cowie. Yeah, look, I actually support you, Brian, with looking after the people down the main street, and that's my thoughts. I think we need to be targeting them, and they're the ones that are going to find it the toughest. All those people with CAFs and tourism and all that sort of stuff. So they're the ones we should be really trying to look after this round. So thank you, everyone. Councillor Foster, you have a question?
I did. It was just around the Mayor's point.
You can just speak up a little bit, please, Mel.
Yeah, it's just around the Mayor's point, because I had a call from a local yesterday to ask whether the rates relief was just for residents or for businesses as well. So I don't know whether that, I'm just having a very quick look again at the council news, whether that's made clear or not.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. I think it's reasonable. Somebody want to answer that, or are we reasonably happy with that? John.
Yes, sure. Chair. I know Steve is going to bring something to council on the COVID-19 impacts for the annual plan, and part of that may be looking at either funds available or so that you can use criteria to assess people on financial hardship, and if they meet that criteria, then we'll be able to get a bit of relief. But I don't want to really preempt. I think Brian and Steve have been working on that in the background, but that's the sort of thing. I mean, you know, you can't really play with the rates rebate scenario or other instructors as they are now. We've just got to invoice, and if they can't pay, then it's about, do we give them more time to pay, or do we write off? And if we write off, do we use funds to do that, or do we have an expense item in the budget? But Brian may comment on that, or His Worship.
Your Worship.
Yeah, I'm just confused around the immediacy, because last week Gore District Council passed a resolution, it was in the ODT, saying that they've deferred anyone that can't pay the rates, they've deferred it for 6 months. They just did it straight off. And that was last week they did that, John.
So is that everyone?
Yeah,
because I mean,
Invercargill votes on the same thing today.
Because I mean, that's, I don't know, from, you know, as the accountant, I'll be scared to hell if that happened, because everybody just doesn't pay. You know, we've got to pay our overheads, get everything going, and it should only be for the people who can't really afford to pay that should be available. So yeah, I don't know, it's dangerous ground and setting precedent. And then where do the legal aspects come in if you're trying to collect later, if there's a council resolution?
I actually rang Heidi from Audit just to get her perspective on it. And yeah, she certainly had questions, but make zero rates look quite easy, yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Your Worship. Look, we've got a couple more hands up. Councillor Ludeman and Councillor Volweiler. We'll take them, and then we'll move on a little bit, I think. So, Councillor Ludeman.
I'd just like to make a comment. I mean, I accept what Brian's saying, but I don't think we should be making any decision on this until at least we staff have prepared some information, and we've got a meeting, I think it's our next meeting the 14th of May, so it's still before rates have to be paid. I don't believe, yeah, we've actually got to have a good overview before any decision be made around that. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying, Brian, but I would hate to be making any decisions without actually having a good overview of everything. So if that's the way we want to go, that's something I guess we can ask staff, but yeah, definitely need the proper.
I fully agree, Ali. We've got a process that we've got to go through. I've got no problem with that. I was just wondering how other councils were getting away with it.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but we couldn't make any decisions at this stage.
Agreed.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Bolweiler.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. No,
You may want to turn your screen off, Bruce, because you're cutting out.
Along the lines of, okay. I was just going to say something much along the lines of what Alison has said. We have, we need quite a bit of information. We need to know, have a good idea of how our businesses are being and residents are being impacted by this situation before we make any decisions. So, perhaps some messaging, if just informally, could go out that we're looking at how to support people, but we haven't made any specific decisions yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bolweiler. So we've got another couple of hands up now. I'll start with John, if you would like to go, and then John Herbert after second. John Scott first, John Herbert.
Thank you, Chair. I know Steve is working with Clutha Development and some of our staff to do a review on some of the employers in the district. So we're going to have a whole lot of data to help inform our decision making. But I see Steve's in now, so maybe he wants to comment on that.
No, sorry, because I must have come in halfway through. It sounds like an important discussion, but my apologies. I was at another meeting.
It's all right. I'll just go to Councillor Herbert first, and then we can go back from there, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Mark, just a couple of comments. There was one comment there about the main street. Look, let's focus on all businesses in the Clutha district, not just the Clutha main street. And I actually think this problem is still mainly in front of us. Most of those businesses will have revenue flowing in over the last month from their trading period prior to lockdown. It won't be so bad. It's actually going to be in the next 2 months that their main problems. It's probably going to be the next rating round that is actually the main problem, I believe, when there's no flow on from coming out of this lockdown. So that's the point I'd make. That actually the problem's mainly in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herbert. So, Steve, we've had a discussion around rates, rebates, and that for the businesses in town and hardship and things like that. So, just wondering where we are with that, really, I guess. And I think we've come up with the idea that we all need to sit around the table and have a bit of a discussion and sort things out before we go too much further. But you may have something comment on that.
Just one question. What item in the agenda are we talking about?
So we're on agenda item number 4 at the moment, the corporate services report. And we've been talking about obviously refunds and rebates and the like. So
yeah, so the decision meeting on the 14th of May will have a decision paper on COVID-19 impacts and responses. So there will be a range of things in it for you, and you'll get 7 days. It'll just normal agenda item. Excuse me. And so that'll have in it impacts such as some guesstimates of revenue reductions, for example, rates penalties. The possibility, and it's a decision you'd make, do we charge for trade waste charges? Do we defer that for 12 months, for example? You'll have to decide on what the charges will be, but then you could decide to defer it for 12 months as a COVID response, as another example. But that impacts on revenues, that has a revenue impact. And then there'll be the expenditure changes. So there'll be some estimation as to whether or not we think there'll be, significant changes to any particular expenditure categories, like, travel, does it make a difference or anything like that, and can be included in that. But equally, the salary decisions. So, the staff, the decision to freeze wages, for example, has a salary impact, positive salary impact. So that will be in that paper as well. So that's that's a positive rating impact in that sense. And so there'll be a range of them like that that we will be producing for you because that's necessary. And then in addition to that, there will be a decision paper on rating options. So those will have impacts on what we come up with. There's already been some changes to the 3.8% we went out with, or the 3.6, I think it was 3.6 we went out with in the draft from the interest rate changes. They'll come to you in the agenda as already included, so there will be a positive change for that. The positive impact of finance charges, and there'll also be a positive impact from the Rural Water Scheme Capital Works program. That's also got a positive rating impact. So, and also some Capital Works changes from carry forwards working on that. So those will come to you to positively impact on what we went out with the 3.6%. That's what you'll see in what we call the baseline. And then outside the baseline will be the COVID-19 impacts, positive and negative, and you'll get to see the average rates side of that. And then another paper will be other options from, whether or not you go to 0%, the impacts of that. It needs to be an option. All you've done in the past is give us some direction, which is good because it means that we didn't include that in the baseline. And also alternative options to that also. And in the alternative options to that, it's just the simple premise being, is it possible to, if you're going to spend X amount of dollars on 0% rates rise and have that problem, is there another option where you are spending similar amounts of money but targeting it to the right places? We talked about that before as part of the direction workshops. So you'll see that coming through in your decision papers for that. And I'm not expecting that there will be a whole lot of detail on potential other options like extensions of rates rebate schemes or other things like that. It's more the principle around whether or not you wish to put some funding, from reserves effectively into supporting those impacted directly from a rates perspective, as opposed to a 0% rates rise across the board as an option, as opposed to stay with the your decisions that you'll need to be making anyway about what would be the rates movement going ahead. Is it going to be 2% or something like that as a result? So that's what you'll see. Hopefully I've explained it in that way. It will be covered in your decision day effectively, and decision reports, and you'll get to see that through the agenda process.
Thank you, Steve. I think that was a fairly comprehensive answer and actually touched on every touch point we had in the discussion. So thanks very much for that. That it is what we need to look at going forward. So, Councillor Herbert, have you got your hand up, or was it from last time? It's down now. Thank you. So I think that's been a reasonable discussion. We do have a recommendation that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Corporate Services Report. Have we got somebody that's prepared to move and second, please? We've got Councillor Finch and Councillor Graham. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That is a unanimous vote. Thank you very, very much. And I'll just ask you to put your hands down, and we'll move on to item number 5, which is also an item for information. And it is the Corporate Properties Update Report. So, John, would you like to speak to this?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take it as read and see if there's any questions. Obviously, we haven't had too much activity on selling our properties. Oh, that's the next one. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. Questions from the floor. I've got 2 or 3 hands up. Councillor Sutherland.
Just the one, and I haven't found it at the moment. Cribs endowment land, the valuation is really down. It was 100 and something, and this time it is 30 or something. Rental from crib sites. It's a third of what it was last year. Is that because it's only part of the year, or was it sure?
Some of it's timing. It depends on when we invoice them, Carol. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Southern. Councillor Fouts.
Yeah, Carol actually just asked my question, but also the valuation expenses. What's the jump in that for, please?
That has to do if lease agreements expire, and we have to go for a market rental. So we have to get the valuations done for those. So that depends on how many of those lease agreements expire during the year compared to each year. So some of them will be multi-year things. So it's just one of those.
Happy with that, Councillor Fouts? Okay. Your Worship.
Sorry, yes, thank you.
Yeah, just following up on Councillor Phelps' question, especially around the Elizabeth Street and the Clinton one, those prices seem rather high when you can get a one-page valuation. I would have thought still for under $1,000, John.
All I know is that Pauline, whenever they're up for renewal, she has a process using a valuer. So I don't know the details on that. That sometimes it doesn't make sense to do a valuation for a very low rental, but it's, you know, if it's asked for by the tenant, we have to do it. So, but I don't know the detail on that, Your Worship.
If we could possibly look into it, John, because a frequent flyer like the council, I know doing the valuation costs I get are less than that, plain and simple.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any further questions for John or Steve? Councillor Catherwood. Might want to put your mute off. Thank you.
Yeah, just on that valuation, John, that one for Whenua Motor Camp at 7,000, is that for a renewal of a lease, or what's the story there? Maybe Steve will know.
What? Sorry, Councillor Catherwood, what page are you on?
Just that valuation figure of 7,000 on Whenua Camping Ground.
I see Steve's got his hand up, so Steve may like to answer that question.
Yes, that's a more involved valuation because we are instigating the potential sale of that motor camp. That's the work that we did. Now, have we got any media here? Yes.
Yes,
so
we have.
I will just keep it simple and say it's an extended valuation, Councillor, because it is looking at the potential sale of that camp, just like we've done with others. There are complicating factors, as you'll be aware, and we are well aware ourselves of those complicating factors, but we are working through that process with the existing tenant. I'll just say publicly, in case you've got any specific questions or concerns about where we're heading with that one, that the expectation is that it would be a sale process similar to Waihola, where we worked with the existing tenant to sell to somebody else. All right, so it would be proposed that we would be selling it to a new investor coming into that property.
Thank you, Councillor Catherwood. Have you got another question? You still got your hand up, or are you happy with that?
No, happy with that, mate.
Thank you very much. So, any further questions? No? Okay. Well, we do have a recommendation on page 51 that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Corporate Properties Update Report. If I can have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Fouts and Councillor Catherwood. Thank you very much for that. All those in favour, please say aye or raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you very much. That's item number 5 done and dusted, and we will move on to item number 6. which is the Development Properties Update Report. John, would you like to speak to that? It's page 54 if you're looking for it, guys.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take this as read. Obviously, we haven't had much activity in the last month or so. I don't think at this stage that I need to have a provision increase because of the market values. I think Steve, was talking about he's had a couple of inquiries even during the lockdown. So I'll take any questions as they come through.
So, questions, team. We've got some questions for John. Okay, so there are no hands raised at all. So I take it that we have one now. Steve, would you like?
I'll just make the point as an update to councillors is that we've still got significant interest in Plantation Heights. And in fact, all the inquiries generally we're getting now are around what's still available. And as the Chair knows, that we even had inquiries about properties that were part of the intensification project. So there's no drop off in interest of properties. The biggest issue we have got is there isn't actually much left within the residential areas that have not already been taken or have been accounted for. And I think the latest updates can show you the picture graphically on the website, exactly what that position is. I've had further work done on the intensification project at Plantation Heights. We've got a few planning issues associated with that, and it is likely that we will probably be going ahead with a slightly reduced version of what we were doing, simply because yes, we've got some technical issues around having to spend a bit more money that we wouldn't want to. But effectively, the front sections in the area would remain intensified, and we would end up keeping the back lots the same size. Otherwise, we have to double the size of the right-of-ways, and there's a few problems with contours and things associated with that. And when you think about it, you can actually get quite a bit of can get a reasonable number of additional lots from making the front lots smaller anyway, without mucking around at all with the rights of way. So we are just investigating that at the moment. So that's happening. A second thing we're investigating is, and I've seen a reasonably exciting scheme plan draft for the lifestyle lots at Plantation Heights. You haven't seen it yet because it's just hot off the press, but we were really looking at the ones that are on the slope from Johnson Road. So you're talking about the lifestyle lots that are the steeper lots, smaller, steeper lots bordering Johnson Road and Plantation Heights lifestyle area. And we can intensify that and get more lots from those as well in a smart way. And I think that's something else that we can pursue, and I'll be looking to bring that back to you as a consequence. We were intending to add services to that area anyway because of requests from people that had thought they were buying some lifestyle lots by the water tower. So that sounds pretty good, and I think they'll be quite. I think they'll be premium properties when you see what we can do with them. So I will be bringing that back to a council meeting. I'm not sure about the 14th because there's a lot on the 14th, but we'll see. Might be another committee meeting, but that's quite exciting as well. So I have seen nothing to say that there is a slackening of demand yet. Not to say it won't happen as we get down the pathway, but there's certainly, we don't have much left there.
Thank you, Steve. And I'll just add to that. Like, if you want to see something really exciting going on, the last couple of days up here, I've been looking out the window and looking over them. There was 5 diggers here yesterday, half a dozen trucks. There's builders, there's subbies, there's people running everywhere down here. It's a full-on construction site, and it's really good to see. So, post-COVID, well, we're not post-COVID, but before we get out of this level 3, it certainly is busy and doesn't look anything like a recession from where I'm sitting. But who knows long term? But yeah, no, so thanks for that. So any more questions from the floor? No, so I think we can, we've got a recommendation here that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Development Properties Update Report. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ludeman and Councillor Kennedy. Thank you very much. All those in favour, hands up, please. And again, unanimous. Thank you very much. So put your hands down, please. That'll be great. And we'll move on to our last, but not least, item from the Corporate and Property Committee. And it is the Organisational Performance Report. And John, I believe you might want to have a talk to this.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Just before I get onto this, can I just make one correction? Brian raised the question about 5,020,000 on the LGFA loan. I've just got the information from Sharon. The 20,000 was the interest accrued at the year end. So it was all the LGFA loan, but it was just the interest. So sorry for that.
Thank you, John.
Okay, if we look at the organisational performance, as exactly as we did with James, going through the stuff for the last meeting, we've got the same reports for all the different activities. So the only thing that you'll notice really that the April numbers are quite low and March was going down. So that just reflects the impact of COVID. If there are questions on the performance, it might be a Gareth or Jules question to answer, but I take it as there it is. If there are any questions from the floor, that'll be great.
Thank you, John. So questions, councillors? Oh, very kind. No questions? Oh, well, we do have a question from Councillor Graham.
Yeah, just on the, I had the wonderful experience of running out of water over the break, and they come out here pretty promptly. I was quite impressed, and I was speaking to the guy from 2 metres away, and he gave me a bit of an insight, and he was telling me how it's amazing how different people's personalities change when they run out of water. And I had a wee think about it, and he said that they go to a place, and if the water's leaking, that's brilliant. You know what you're doing, you can fix it straight away. But if there's no water, and this can be related to wastewater or whatever as well, if you can't see the problem straight away, it can turn into a real nightmare. So I take my hats off to these guys. They did a really good job, though, and they were smiling, And I was thinking, it's peeing down with rain and it's cold, and you've got to, you're going to try and fix that. And I did try myself and lost the O-ring, and you've got to open that water up again and all that sort of stuff. But it's not just, it's how the personalities and how they are treated by some of the customers. Really surprised me. Good stuff to them. They need a pat in the back. We're hearing too much bad press about them. Hey, when they're doing right, give them a pat in the back.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. And duly noted. I'm just hoping we can get that message passed on to them, please, John. Totally endorse that comment from Councillor Graham. So any further questions? No? Okay, so we have a recommendation on the bottom of page 58 that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Organisational Performance Report. And we have a mover already, Councillor Finch. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Thompson, sorry. Councillor Thompson, thank you very much. And all those in favour, please put your hands up. Fantastic. Once again, that looks to be unanimous. So thank you, people. And that brings the Corporate and Property Committee meeting to an end.
I think we have one more item, haven't we? Have we not got the Corporate and Property Committee Work Programme Report, Chair?
My computer didn't print it off and I haven't seen it. Anybody else?
Page 69.
Yes.
Okay.
There.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I can't lead this. I haven't got any information. I did print all this off this morning, but I just didn't get page 69. I do apologise. So,
69
John,
and
do
72.
you want to lead this for us, just please?
Yep. So it's our normal work program that we plan for the year versus what we execute. So whatever we've planned, we've actually done in terms of the agenda. So I don't think I'll take questions.
Any questions, people? Doesn't seem to be any questions, so I guess this time we can take the recommendation. I don't know how it's read,
Yes,
but if we can...
that the Corporate and Property Committee receives the Corporate and Property Committee Work Program Report.
Thank you, John. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Herbert and Councillor Ludeman, thank you very much. And all those in favour? And again, that is unanimous, so thank you very much. And this time it brings our meeting of Corporate and Property Committee to an end. So, and I thank you for attendance and thank you very much.
Good stuff, Kenny.
I think you might be up next, Brucey, are you?
No, I'm last, mate.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, next.
I wasn't talking to you, it was the other Bruce.
Should only take about 2 minutes to do Volley's one unless he has a stroke.
Hold on, can we check the order of that, please? I thought service deliveries next.
Oh, whatever.
Yes, it is, Bruce. It is neat.
Yep. So, Bruce,
does anyone want
to wake up now?
Does anybody need a break for a cup of tea or go and urinate or anything like that? I don't know. No? Well, welcome to the meeting of the, what are we? Service delivery. It's been a long week. I'm back at work. Struggling a wee bit. Any apologies? No apologies? No. Any declarations of interest? No. And public forum, there's the press and I see some staff members there. Right, we'll go straight to item 1, which is an item for information. That's the group manager's update, and we'll go to Jules. Are you there, Jules?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Happy to take that report as read and answer any questions.
How do you find out if there's anybody who wants questions?
I'll put their hand up.
Yeah, get participants up on the side of your screen, Bruce, by going to the bottom, and you'll see participants, press on it, and you'll see the little blue hands going up if you've got them down the side.
All right, so no one wants to. Oh, yeah.
Jules, I was showing you how it worked, Bruce.
A demo? Yeah, no.
That's right.
Oh, I'm right with this technology now. No questions, so that was easy. We'll go back to...
Sorry, Bruce, just probably one quick comment if there aren't any questions. I was in an infrastructure webinar this morning, and there was some commentary from the chairman of the Crown Infrastructure Partners committee that we've submitted as outlined in the report, and he did mention that there was just about all local authorities have submitted projects for consideration, and it sounded pretty similar to I suppose the mix that we had submitted as well, in terms of a mix of water, transportation, not probably quite so many transportation ones, but also building projects. So it sounds like it's a reasonably similar but pretty significant response from local government towards that request for projects. So there was no other updates in terms of timeframes. The one other thing he did mention, though, was that they would be looking to leverage their funding and limited funds by basically working in partnership. So he was talking about 50% there in terms of contribution. So that potentially means that our NZTA assisted projects would be ones that that may not get a look in, because we already get 59% for those if they're approved. But at this stage it was very early and it was some general comments, so we'll just wait to see what we get back once the information starts to come back through that process.
Good, thank you for that. I did notice on the news this morning, it was just that, you know, how it goes across the bottom of the screen, and it had how they were diverting money from the Provincial Growth Fund for it, but it only said 48 million. And I thought, well, that's not going to go too far if, but surely, yeah, it might be something else. So I just caught the end of it. Anyway, back to the item number 1. Do we have a mover for that, please, and a seconder? I don't see any hands going up.
Yep.
Oh, yes. Moved by Bruce 1 and seconded Stuart Cowie, Councillor Cowie. All those in favour, can we push the button? And look, it's that like anonymous, unanimous one. That's good. Yeah, so we'll move that. We'll move on to the item number 2, which is page 6. Which is operations update, transportation. Do we go to you, Jules, or is that Murray Fletcher?
Murray's in attendance for that, Mr. Chairman. So I'll hand over to Murray Fletcher.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the report's fairly brief this month due to the COVID and the lockdown. Just very briefly, and then I'll take it as read, but very briefly, South Roads, the contractor, has been undertaking essential work only. So that's been any potholes, weather grading, inspections, but otherwise not a lot more than that. But however, they are back. They have provided a comprehensive startup plan which takes into account social distancing and hygiene guidelines, and they're back up and running in full, as full as they can as of this Tuesday. There will be some small efficiency because of the social distancing and so forth, they won't be as efficient what they would normally be, but generally they're back up and running in full. And so that includes general maintenance, flood repairs, and there's also quite a comprehensive program of maintenance gravel that's been forwarded to South Roads late last week, so they'll be onto that as well. So I'll just now take it as read, and any questions.
I take it that there won't be, with everybody only doing essential travel, there won't be that much wear on our roads anyway, will there? If everybody's obeying the rules.
Mr. Chairman, that's an interesting comment. We've still got stock trucks and milk trucks running. We have been over the lockdown period, so the light vehicles certainly have been down in numbers, but a lot of the heavier vehicles, it's been almost business as usual. So there has been a wee bit of damage, especially on the unsealed roads, and that's now it's been attended to during the lockdown, but and being attended to as well now.
No, you did right, actually, now that you remind me, because there's been a lot of traffic up my way and there's been a lot of dust, but I'm right at the bottom of the priority list for subsidised boarding. We won't get into that. Is there any questions of Murray? Where are we? Councillor Sutherland.
Microphone. Further forward on stockpiling the pile of metal that we agreed to some time ago?
Through the chair, I had a bit of difficulty hearing, but I think the question was around stockpiling of materials. So there is stock. I'm not sure if you're referring to an agreement that council has with the contractor, or just in general to get the maintenance gravelling underway. But there is material stockpiled. It's not huge amounts, and there will have to be more material won and crushed, even for the current round of maintenance gravelling that we're undertaking.
I see Jules's hands popped up there. Have you got a response to that, Jules?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just to provide an update, we are still working through the issues around aggregate quality, Councillor Sutherland. So that was a prerequisite before looking at the stockpiles. And Murray may not be aware of that project. I think we have discussed it, but basically it's still on hold until we sort out the aggregate issues. There's also discussions with the contractor about space in some of the quarries to stockpile significant amounts of material. But the current focus is making sure the material is fit for purpose, and the contractor has indicated they're having issues with identifying good sources around the district, and there's been quite a bit of work going on by Murray and the transportation guys on that issue of quarries and locations and suitable aggregate for maintenance metal.
Yes, Steve, I see your name's popped up. Do you want to add to that?
I'm just simply saying that, yes, there is a strategic assessment being done by transportation around aggregate supply. It is one of our projects.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy?
Just wanted to say, great to see South Road's thing there of trying to catch up. My question there, Murray, is we still haven't caught up from flooding, so we're quite a wee way behind there. And with winter coming on, so obviously they'll prioritise the more urgent ones before winter for roading.
Yes, through the chair, we've had that discussion with South Roads. So the work will be prioritised whether it's business as usual or flood damage. So yes, you're correct. We will be prioritising the work.
So will we ever catch up?
Will we catch up? It will take at least until Christmas to complete the flood repairs. We're still identifying some of the work required. Certainly the last five to 6 weeks hasn't helped in that respect. And the backlog of work is really flood repairs and maintenance gravel. So we've got them full steam ahead with maintenance gravel at the moment. And as I said, the flood repairs, we're still identifying some of it, but it will take until around Christmas to complete those flood repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cowie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, it's three asked question, please, Murray. Most of the questions already been answered, but you talked about priorities. So you're following the existing schedule you had, or if you're getting service requests, and I was talking to someone that was involved with the service request, where do they slot in with the work program at the moment?
Right, again through the chair, the service requests are being dealt with the same as any other work. So we're going through that and prioritising any service requests. So priorities, it will generally be first up around safety, and then work that might, if we don't do it now, might get worse and cost more in the future. So we'll prioritise that work. So service requests, yes, they're going into the pot as business as usual and being prioritised.
Thank you.
Councillor Herbert, was it? Or have you pulled your hand down there, Councillor Herbert?
Yeah, look, basically my question's probably been answered. I was along the lines of 1.4, and traditionally this is a time when we put a lot of our gravel on our roads leading into winter when the base is a little bit softer and it beds in more, and I was kind of wondering how much time we'd actually lost. Have we got a traditional start date when we generally start that program? And how much time we lost, and I suppose a bit like all the other, can we catch up? We've actually had really favourable conditions, ground conditions lately, and it would be nice to get onto it sort of ASAP, I suppose.
Yes, through the chair, well, we've obviously lost the last 5 weeks, and there had been a bit of time lost prior to that because we were a wee bit concerned just about some of the programming. However, we have forwarded to South Roads, as I mentioned late last week, a comprehensive list of roads to get onto, and that amounts to close to $300,000 worth of maintenance aggregate to go on the roads. And we've got 2 of the council's inspectors out this week, James and Peter, looking at a further group of roads and checking those, and if they require maintenance metalling, they'll get on the list as well. So from here on in, it will be at the mercy of the weather to some extent, but there's certainly plenty of work there for South Roads to go on to, and they're very keen to get into it and to make a good dent in the program before it stopped due to the weather.
Thank you.
Jules, I see your hands up again. Is that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I just was wondering if Murray could that briefly touched on the impact on sealing from the delay in the shutdown, because it's potentially got a significant impact. If you could just comment on that, Murray, that would be useful.
Yes, through the chair. So, as you appreciate, chip sealing, you need favourable conditions to undertake it. So, we have had a request from the contractor for additional assistance and payment around chip sealing. The crews have to come from Dunedin, and under the social distancing, instead of bringing one truck, they might have to bring 2 trucks, instead of having 1 ute, 2 utes, etc. So the operation will be slower and more expensive. So they've given us quite a comprehensive breakdown of the additional costs, and we're just looking at that at the moment. I don't think there's any question that there is additional cost, and we'll have to deal with these various requests as they come in relating to COVID-19 shutdown.
That's good. So is there anyone else? If not, we'll go back to page 6 to the recommendation that the Service Delivery Committee receives the operations update. Do I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Finch, seconded Councillor Sutherland. All those in favour? Oh, and again, clean sweep. Pass. We'll go on to the next item, which is on page 8, the operations update. It's a item for information. Gareth, are you out there somewhere?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, mate.
Great. Nice to see you all, or some of you. I can see a few faces. So here's the operations update for all the other areas other than transportation. And happy to take it as read and answer any questions as they arise.
Right. Any questions? What have we got? Councillor Kennedy.
Yes, hi, through you, Chairman. Gareth, the hospital, hang on, I've got to get hospital road detention. And I know we're still trying to figure out who owns this thing or who's in the what of it. Is it not best that with winter coming on that we get these drains sorted, even if we've got to build them later?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, indeed. And our contractors received an instruction to clear the culverts. There's quite a bit of vegetation that needs to be cleared. That's a conversation to be had with Regional Council. And Jules has also had a bit of conversation with somebody at Regional Council regarding the ownership of this asset and its and the necessary repairs there. So first thing is to make sure for smaller rainfall events that the culverts work, of course, and that's what we're working on. I've got people up there as we're speaking now, so that's definitely underway. When that's cleared, I think there's a bit of chasing up to do with Regional Council. They've been chasing me up a bit recently. I think it'd be nice to chase them up and get some feedback about what they're doing with that asset to make sure it's fit for purpose.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Herbert.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And my question's around the Waitahuna rural water supply. It looks like it's had a fair old upgrade, and there was a bit of money spent on it. And it's probably one of the first ones to go through this upgrade. I was just kind of wondering if we've had a chance to do any testing at this end, whether it's going to meet our expectations and the drinking water standards and that sort of thing. I see it's got some pump issues, but just trying to get my head around whether we're on target to meet what we set out to achieve with those rural water scheme upgrades.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I agree. It's had a lot of money spent on it, and there's been a bit of disappointment with some water outages that we've had. I've been informed that leaves blocking the water intake to the pump that pumps the water to the treatment plant is an annual event at autumn, of course. And I haven't heard of that before, but apparently this is the case. Also, that coincided with a number of system breaks as well. So when you have a lot of demand in the system, or a greater demand than you should have because of the breaks in the pipes, and the pumping station trying to keep up, it's a bit disappointing when it doesn't, especially having spent money on it. Water quality wise, it seems to be a lot better, but we're still having volume issues there as well. So it's getting on top of the demand will allow us to put or carry on producing good quality water. Hope that answers the question.
Yep. Right.
Jules, oh, sorry.
No, I'm good.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, just to specifically answer Councillor Herbert's question, the upgrades that we've done are to try and, as Gareth said, deliver the water to the current customers. It's still in need of a major overhaul or a complete replacement of the water treatment plant. So the work we've done to date is to keep it going. There's still major components of that plant that will not, cannot produce the water to meet the drinking water standards in a sufficient quantity. So that other work has been ongoing with the water schemes that are supplied from that to look at other options for them, like the Clydevale bores, or an alternative would be a significant upgrade at the plant in terms of clarifier and those sorts of things. So while it has had a lot of work, that's to keep the water flowing and has not been able to have a huge impact on water quality to produce or it has improved it, but not enough to produce the demand on the schemes.
So that Waitahuna, does that feed Balmoral 2, Jules?
Yes, it feeds Balmoral 1, Mr. Chairman, Balmoral 2, and also the Tuapeka East scheme.
Because I have noticed that in the last month or so, you can smell the chlorine where you never used to be able to. So if they are doing some work and changing the process with it, or is it just my imagination?
Mr. Chair, yes, it is higher. What this particular contractor likes to do is to make sure, which is the correct thing to do, is to make sure that there's residual chlorine as the water is pumped into the reticulation, into the scheme, which means that if it's doing its job, it produces a small byproduct called chloramine, and that's the stuff that you can smell. And that means it's actually disinfecting the water. It's killing anything that's there. So whatever you're receiving, if you smell that, then it's definitely done its job.
Oh, that's good, because I thought I was losing my marbles a bit. Councillor Finch, followed by Foster and Sutherland, please.
Thank you. I have 3 questions on 3 different pages. On page 10, the Balclutha green wall, is that a permanent fix to irrigate them? And how come the as-built plans didn't match the physical installation, do we know? That's just one. I have another 2.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this was a revelation to me. It was just in a contract meeting, the contract manager said to me that they had difficulties. When they tried to repair the irrigation problem, there was a mismatch between the as built and what was actually there. So they had to fumble around and make it work in a way that it wasn't designed to. So it is repaired. That's the good news. The bad news was that it was one of these projects that seems to have been handed over without perhaps full checking of the documents. I'm not sure when that went in, when it was constructed. You can tell me that maybe. But it was, yeah, it's disappointing when these two don't match. This is for an engineering organization. You know, that's our bread and butter. That's what we need to do our job properly. And
so have we got a comeback on that company?
I did ask about that, and I don't think there's any relationship with that organisation anymore.
Okay, and then page 11, the playgrounds were being maintained using best judgment on whether to repair or replace equipment until guidance is received regarding a full plan for destination playgrounds. Is that for all the playgrounds around? Are you looking at replacing a lot of the equipment?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, the point I was trying to get across there was that when I have contract meetings with the green space contractor, South Roads, they're coming back to me and saying, well, we found this broken piece of playground equipment. What do you want us to do? And it's been a little unclear for me. I'm supposed to give them guidance, and I'm having a little bit of difficulty doing that.
Okay, yep.
Telling them when to replace. Yeah.
Yeah, and number 4, Milton Pool vicinity drainage. What is the drainage issue? Is it from the pool, or is it groundwater not related to the pool, or is it flood water?
I'm just catching up on my notes, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. Was this under aquatics number 5?
No, number 4, the infrastructure issues, Milton Pool vicinity drainage, C.
Sorry. Behind the pool in the streets, Coronation Court, I think it is. I may have mentioned this in a previous committee meeting. I did some experimental work there to see if we could get away with not installing some drainage around the school, the high school, and that's now proven to have not been. It was slightly successful, but it wasn't as successful as I was hoping. So that means the other plan, that my plan B, has to go ahead, which is putting in some drainage on the edge of the school field that feeds into the creek, and we'll keep that area dry. It'll stop the water flowing across the school field and into Coronation Court.
Okay, thank you. And last question is on page 12, and it's under Milton, and it's the wetlands require significant work and contributing to the exceedances. Proposal from City Care in excess of 300k just for the wetland tidy up. Have we got no comeback on Fulton Hogan over any of those issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, these are big costs. I think it would appear to be a mixture of years of maintenance not being occurring, and also maybe some design issues as well in that particular instance. Before attending this meeting today, Jules and I were discussing this very topic, and via email, and we were just talking about what some of the clever options could be. There are ways to make it limp along with some other ideas that we've got floating around, which would be a lot cheaper than that. And also bypassing the ponds, the wetland altogether is another method. We think that the wetlands are actually contributing to lower discharge wastewater quality, especially with the bird life and aquatic life and the general level of suspended solids in the liquid. That stops us from doing our job properly.
Yes, but my point being that obviously Fulton Hogan were not doing the proper maintenance, and we have paid for that. Is there nothing we can do about that at all? Nothing.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, this is one of many issues and concerns I've come across relating to that company, and with respect, I think it probably needs a conversation or further conversation with my management team, because yes, this isn't the only occurrence.
I think,
So
Councillor Finch, we've got to be careful here that we just don't just jump in and blame Fulton Hogan. It doesn't specifically say there that it's all caused by the previous contractor. I think we've just got to be careful what we say and investigate it thoroughly before we start.
Yes, that's what I'm
casting out
asking.
blame.
That's what I'm asking, if we can investigate and see if there is any comeback, if they are at fault. That's all my questions answered. Thank you.
Right, Jules, I see your hands up. Do you want to say something there?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to add that the actual wetland was completely cleaned out in 2017. So it actually does grow back at quite a significant rate. And all of those sorts of works that are specifically programmed at the treatment plants are not normally included in the lump sum. So there wouldn't have been any cost if Fulton Hogan weren't doing any any work on the wetland. What I think, as Gareth alluded to, we're trying to look at long-term solutions that aren't going to have ongoing maintenance costs, and that's going to be part of the compliance program we put together that will come back through the Chief Executive for discussion with the Council and with the Regional Council.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My query was around the report that came through from Jules late this morning from City Care about the biofiltro plants, and there was reference there to a truck wash not being compliant with discharge requirements, and I'm just confused about that. I'm not sure if that's a mistake.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you. No, that definitely wasn't a mistake. There are currently 2 truck washers, one in Heriot and one in Lawrence, that are supposed to meet almost the equivalent of domestic effluent standards to be able to discharge into the sewer. A significant treatment system has been put in for the Heriot truck wash, and they have not been compliant in the past, but the last round of sampling, the Heriot truck wash discharge was compliant for everything except total nitrogen, and it was trending down. The Lawrence truck wash, however, was significantly over in just about every parameter, and as such, we need to have a discussion with them about either making very rapid, significant improvements or being disconnected from the Lawrence sewage system, which has got ongoing compliance issues, and we're under pressure to make sure we're compliant. So we need to do exactly the same thing with any of those trade waste discharges.
Okay, sorry, understand now. And my other question was just around recycling. When do we have any idea of when that will start again, the pickup?
I'm happy to answer that, Mr. Chairman. At this stage, we're definitely not going to have recycling at level 3. There is some doubt as to whether it will recommence at level 2 as well. In terms of the industry guidance, there's still a big backlog of recycling and those sorts of issues. So if it does recommence at level 2, we may well just be creating a bigger backlog for that. So we are asking our contractors what the status will be at level 2, but at this stage we haven't been able to get confirmation that it will recommence at level 2, and that is part of what has gone out in the industry guidance across New Zealand as well. So some TLAs are looking to restart it at level 2, but not all.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Sutherland, followed by Kennedy and Ludeman.
Just three things. One is why are staff still having problems with the password at the particular electronic system and the biofilter thing. First one.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I did have a little difficulty hearing you. I think you were talking about passwords and PLCs and biofiltros. Is that correct?
That's right. Why are they still having problems after 9 months?
Oh, yeah. When as far as I can tell, originally there was the biofilter company, and then there was Intergroup who had a relationship with biofilter, and I think there were protection passwords put into these programmable electronic devices at the biofilter sites, and that information was never transferred from wherever it was when it started to Fulton Hogan when they had the contract, and Fulton Hogan had nothing to hand over to CityCare when that transfer was made. And in that duration, in that in-between time, it's been uncovered that maintenance wasn't occurring. And then in trying to catch up and actually improve the sites and improve the maintenance regime, what's happened is that Peter Ross, who's been brought back in to help us with the biofilters, has turned up at these sites and discovered that he can't make the changes. Well, he can make some changes, but they won't stay in the program because he can't override it. And it's alleged that some people had these passwords but weren't passing them on to us. So CityCare have gone to some length to wingle this information out of some companies, and now we've managed to get access, and now we're seeing the progress with lowering the pond levels, which we couldn't do before.
So you have all the passwords now?
I think we have I think that we have some passwords and we have workarounds to get by, but it's still not perfect. So what we're doing is trying to design a system to replace what's there, so that we've actually got full control and ownership of that intellectual property.
Thank you. And the second one was just about the Clutha pool. Because we're now in level 3 and 2 weeks that the pool can't be opened, why is the pool not closed now for the annual cleaning? It could be closed now for 4 or 5 weeks and then reopen to keep staff working and things.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That is occurring. That is our plan. We are bringing forward the maintenance period to coincide with not being able to use the pool.
So what are the dates for it, Gareth? When is it actually going to happen?
I understand that maintenance has already begun.
Right, good. Thank you. And
Sorry.
Sorry.
We have brought the maintenance forward, Councillor Sutherland. There is, unfortunately, we are going to have a short shutdown just for a few days or a week because some parts for the boiler have been ordered and won't arrive in the country until August. Hopefully they will still arrive in August for that, but they will be dependent on international shipping. But certainly all of the cleaning and other maintenance that we can do has been brought forward and is happening over the next 2 weeks.
2 weeks, great. And I guess the only other thing was the Harriet car wash or truck wash. We've been hearing about that for months. I know they've got 4 weeks to come right. After that, do we find them, or what's the story? We've been reading about this on lots of minutes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. So, I have a lot of discussions with the regional council, and one of the things that they're talking to us about is the wording of our current resource consents to discharge from our treatment facilities. And what they're saying is that it's turned into a bit of an argument, because they're saying that we, council, shouldn't be accepting anything other than domestic waste into the reticulation, because that's what it says on the resource consent. So it's a point of discussion and argument, and we're trying to work our way through that. Harriet truck wash, yes, it's getting improvements have been made, and they have been hampered because of the timing of these current COVID-19 events as well. A lot of people use that excuse, but that is part of it. We are seeing improvements, but if we were to follow the regional council line, we wouldn't be accepting anything than residential waste.
Steve, I see you've got your hand up. Have you got something to add to that, or?
Just through Mr. Chairman, that yes, that the Harriet truck wash has been around for quite some time, but they finally had enough of that situation, and action has been taken. It doesn't happen in 2 seconds, but recently that has happened. So the spanner in the works now is that, having taken that action to make it work and not impact negatively on the Harriet treatment plant, we've now got a problem with the regional council about being able to put that trade waste in the first place in terms of the consents. And of course it raises the question, so where else could it possibly go? But that doesn't, that's a different situation as to, Councillor, what you're saying is that yes, we've been subjected to impacts on that plant from the truck wash, or that has been one contributing factor, but that has now been, or significant work has been done there. I think the point is that in Lawrence, and you know, Jules and Gareth are listening, and the other managers as well, is that, you know, I don't want the same situation as in Harriet, sitting there for Lawrence for the next, you know, 12 months with nothing happening. So I'm confident that the team is moving at a quicker pace to resolve the subsequent issues with the Lawrence one, so we don't have the same situation as Harriet.
Right, we happy with that?
Thank you.
Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To you, Gareth, or Jules, whoever's there. Wastewater. It's lovely to see all the system statuses and what's going on. When I first come on council was just after the biofilter units had gone in. Now, I'm assuming back then they went in to bring some of these other plants up to compliance. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's why they went from the pond and added the biofilters on. My questioning is, over time, and with the way the planet's going, with the way future's going, are we going to start doing some work in the background to actually, I know we're putting in a lot of money into fixing these, but if they're not working and they are not going to, and we can't afford to keep up with their whatever to keep them going, and our other systems that we need to bring up, and because compliances keep changing all the time, and I know it's crystal ball gazing, but we seem to do a lot of it. what I suppose my question is, what are we doing in the background as investigation type work of where we go for these sort of plants in the future? No different to our drinking water. These are the two main things in our council, apart from our roading. Yeah, I want to see in the future some money coming inside so that we can, I don't know, whether we investigate or what else is out there. What is everybody else doing? I know you guys probably look at it within your job because that's what you look at, but I mean, I dare say that's why in those days Peter Ross come up with the biofilter units. I don't know. I'm just surmising, but I would like to actually start us investigating into other systems. Is there better systems, or is there better ways that we can do things? I don't know. I'm just putting it out there.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I've never seen these things before, biofilter, in all the other places I've worked. But they're here. There's 5 of them, and it is a method of polishing the effluent, so to speak, before it's discharged.
Yeah.
I find it quite high maintenance method of doing this kind of work, and Jules might be able to comment on maybe the financial benefits in installing these in the first place, but there was a decision made at some point, and you know, if they are maintained, they can do a reasonable job. Not maintaining them, they won't do anything at all, and that's a problem we've faced, of course. One of the things that we've done in the background, or were doing before the heat was turned up somewhat by regional council, is actually using the existing structure, take out the wood shaving media and fill it full of bits of plastic that turns it into what's called a trickling filter. That has a lot less maintenance and does a very good job, but we need to trial it, and we need to have this collaboration with the regional council to develop these things and go forward and trial them, say at Kaka Point. That's the one place that came up, or possibly Owaka. So that you don't have to throw the whole thing away. In fact, you don't have to throw anything away. You can carry on doing what we're doing now, except that it's going to be, in my opinion, an expensive way of doing that particular job. What I would like to see is a partial remedy where we remove the media, try something else that's tried and tested around the world, and have something that just plods along day to day. There's never any issues with overflows, because you can always get the flow of water through the unit, and it won't let us down. That's what I'd like to see, and that's the sort of thing we've done in the background. So we have linked up with Apex Environmental and ERPRO, two consultants who are experts in this field, and they both agree with the trickling filter approach. But it's one of many solutions, and we will carry on investigating.
Jules, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, I don't want to go into the history, but I would just like to point out that under item 2.3 in my report, we have alluded to a compliance plan for exactly what you're talking about, Councillor Kennedy, about looking at the short-term, medium-term and long-term options for moving all of our, initially we're focusing on the wastewater systems, getting up to full compliance, and that will be looking at other options and doing exactly the same thing for water treatment as well. So that work is already underway to bring that information back through to the Chief Executive, and that will then be a discussion with councillors and the Regional Council and looking at funding, what funding requirements may be, so you guys can make some decisions about options for moving to full compliance. So happy to talk about it offline from how we got to this position, but at this stage with that work, we're focusing on how we move forward and give you guys the information so you can make some decisions about how we move to compliance. Thanks.
Thank you. Ellie.
Hi, I've just got a question, and it's probably my ignorance, but the Gypsy Caravan along Hasbro Place, what's its purpose?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Okay. This is something that happens around the world. So at the lowest point in a poos and wheeze goes into pipes and follows gravity and goes down to the hill. So it always gets to the lowest point. So it's trying to head towards the river. When it gets to that low point on the side of Hasbro Place, there's a deep chamber in the ground. And what happens is that all of the manholes that you see around the place, they are they're part of the reticulation of the gravity system. The sewage goes down through the pipes, ends up in the pumping station. It's at the lowest point, so it can't make it round to the treatment plant on its own. So we give it a push. So we've got pumps in there, and they suck it from the bottom and they push it out of just under the ground level, surface level, and over the bridge and down the road to the treatment plant.
Okay, I mean, I guess yeah, I mean, I've been watching this for weeks, I guess, at the amount of maintenance that's been done on this building. That's a wee bit of where I'm coming from, because there's been huge amount of time spent on painting, water blasting the roof and everything else, and that was why I've kind of asked the question, because I would need to be fairly important for the amount of maintenance that's gone on it.
Through you again, Mr. Chairman. What I've found over the years is that if something is, if it looks good or looks, presentable, then it's maintained that way. And I'm trying to instill that philosophy across the district in all of our water and wastewater and stormwater facilities. I want the contractors to take pride in what they're doing, and it starts with the way it looks. If it looks like a load of shite, then they're going to treat it that way. And I think if we polish it up a bit, then there's more chance that our contractors are going to do a good job with the rest of the, the working parts of that asset.
Okay, and look, it's fine. I wasn't sure exactly its whole purpose. I've seen a heck of a lot of man-hours being spent on it, so that's the question I'm asked. It does look way better, so no, that's fine. You've answered the question. Thank you.
I think, Ellie, you paint your house and you have all that sort of looking good, so we've got to do that with our assets, don't we? Dane, Councillor Catherwood, followed by Mayor Cadogan. You there, Dane? Earth calling Dane? No, might have. I'll go on to Mayor Cadogan. Are you there, Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gareth, just wondering, you mentioned two groups called Apex and Airflow and how they were sort of looking at the systems. Did that constitute like a peer review?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Well, what happened was that staff had we had the idea to convert these biofiltros, and I invited ERPRO, E-R-P-R-O, from they're up in Coromandel, and I know the guy because he used to run the Christchurch wastewater treatment plant. He's an extremely clever engineer. We brought him in to assess what we had and whether these ideas, these initiatives were feasible. And this was in fact the case. He supported it and said, yes, that will work. When CityCare took over the contract last July, they did the same thing with their subsidiary, which is Apex Environmental. And they came along, and I'd already told them about this initiative, and they assessed it and they agreed that was a good way forward. So that, I have to stress, it's one of many solutions, but we were just thinking it could be a cost-effective one. And at the time I was thinking maybe we could use some of the recycled plastic instead of bringing it in from overseas, but I'm not sure that's going to be successful. But it's still got to be rubbished and thrown out yet. So it's still an idea.
Just going on from what Councillor Kennedy said, you know, like for years now I've heard how the Milton ponds aren't working, how the water doesn't get out of Waihola quick enough, how the biofilters are marginal. Do you think that if we did, I wouldn't have a clue whether moving forward biofilters up to it, or if it's right on the pencil level, are we always going to get caught out? Do you think it'll be a good time to do a peer review?
I think so. I don't think that's a bad idea. You just have to be aware, I guess, that it's expensive. I mean, if you've got things that work or are close to working and they only need a tweak, then maybe that's maybe a peer review would reveal that. I'm a little bit suspicious of some peer reviews because they may find in favor of an expensive solution, which would not be good for our ratepayers, I guess.
The only problem is if we're right at the Plimsoll line now and the costs just keep on coming through, and we don't have the courage to at least look, if it comes back through and that's what it costs and we can make an informed decision, I think it's better than ducking from the real issues. How will we instigate one?
Sorry, if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could just answer that. That is exactly what we'll be doing, Brian, as part of our compliance plan. As Gareth's almost sort of hinted, if you ask 3 different sewage design engineers what the solution is, they'll come up with 3 different solutions. So we are looking to use, part of that compliance plan is looking to get more than one opinion on how we can actually deliver compliance. And then we're going to have to, and different options will have different costs. We have moved on from biofiltro for Heriot and Kaitangata. We've got membrane systems and enhanced pond treatment systems there as well. So there are other options. When we originally looked at biofiltro, membranes were a lot more expensive than they are now. So part of that compliance plan is identifying those long-term compliance problems and then making sure we get good advice and bring back to council options from that advice on how those long-term compliance issues can be resolved with confidence, because we want to be confident that whatever we do and whatever we invest, and there will be investment required, is going to get us up to being compliant. With biological systems, there are inherent issues with variability that we need to be building into our solutions to ensure we're compliant moving forward. So that will be part of that process in terms of getting other advice and building in that a component of that peer review in our solutions for long-term compliance. The more it's going to cost to deliver, the more it's worth spending money up front to make sure it's got a high chance of success.
Thank you.
Steve, I see you've got your hand up. Do you want to add something there?
I was simply going to say that the strategic compliance plans are being developed between staff and CityCare, and they will need to be reviewed by other experts, obviously, to just cross-check that we are going to be going down or suggesting the right path. The other part of it, though, is that we are looking at it from 2 different perspectives. We've got a different issue associated with the resource consents, as opposed to the achieving new resource consents is a significant part of where we need to be going as well. So they're two different elements, and we're just going to need to be careful that we are making sure that we are matching the two, and that's one of the reasons why we are seriously working with the regional council around potentially having short-term consents issued to knock off compliance negatives which we can't achieve without an existing consent, but without knowing strategically what the big investment solution is going to be. You don't want to be, we don't think we should be in a position of waiting 5 years or 4 years to go down that pathway. We're better off getting a short-term consent while we're working with the regional council on what are the solutions. So they need to be integrated. We want to make sure that where we're heading on consents, resource consents, the 2-year options and the long-term options matches the strategic compliance plan for having a quality product and a quality output. So that's part of it as well.
Thank you, Councillor Finch, and then we'll try and wrap this one up, please.
Thank you. Gareth, you said about the plastic bottles replacing the sawdust media. We discussed that, about 9 months ago, and there was nothing progressed on that. If that's looked at again, how long would it take, if it looks like it would be successful, till it is up and running approximately?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, I remember doing some calculations back then about how many tons of recycled plastic I would need and which particular types of plastic. We thought that plastic milk bottles, because they're slightly dimpled, they've got a bit of a texture to them, they might have been a successful option. And then we needed to find a machine that ripped them apart and provided a large surface area. Jules at the same time contacted a company in China and had a sample delivered to council of what is professionally used in trickling filters, and it's an odd shaped piece of plastic with a large surface area, and then you would need to put thousands in. So how long would it take? It would take as long as it takes to purchase the product from, if you use the professional product, we would get a number of containers of it delivered from China, and then that would need to be transported to the site. In the case of Caca Point, that's the smallest biofilter, and we would probably use that as a trial. I started off, you said it was something like 9 months ago, and that sounds about right to me. That's when I contacted regional council to get their, get their buy-in, to get their some collaboration with them, and they just there wasn't much interest. So I went ahead and did a few bits of investigation of trying to use recycled plastic locally, thinking we could have a double whammy there. And I think with a few weeks of research, we could probably either say that's a goer or not. But the other solution, I would guess it would be a few months to procure the plastic, to empty out the biofilters, to put in some kind of bypass arrangement, and to maybe have a temporary consent with regional council to, because it probably wouldn't comply for a while. So does that sort of answer the question, for you.
Yeah, can you recall why then it wasn't put to a trial process when it had been discussed with us and that, but then it never went ahead to a trial? Do you know why?
I was having some personal problems with family members in hospital, so I wasn't progressing it at the time. Also, it was the introduction of a new contractor and all of the issues around that. It was the termination of the previous contract. There were a few things that were probably getting in the way. But the idea was there and ready to go if we decided that was the solution. But I definitely had no contact with regional council over it. It was not particularly supported.
Right. Yeah,
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chairman, there are quite a few concerns about microplastics and getting into waterways and things like that as well. So we would have to be really careful using non-stabilised plastics, non-UV stabilised plastics, because they may break down and get into the waterway. There's nothing to stop this as being an option once we've done that extra review and the peer review. But this could be one of the solutions for our biofiltros. But I think the issue is we need to do that strategic compliance plan work that we've talked about, and then this would be considered alongside that as potential upgrades for these systems. But at this stage, we need to do that work, and we would not want to do this until we've confirmed it's likely to give us long-term compliance of our current consent conditions.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jules. That answers all my questions. Thank you.
Right, can we go back to page 8, the recommendation that the Service Delivery Committee receives the operations update. Moved by Councillor Cowie, seconded Councillor Payne. So everybody should press your thing, and that's another unanimous one. Well done. We'll move on to item number 5. We might be able to get through this by 5 o'clock. Item number 4, capital delivery update on page 14. Jerry, are you there, mate?
Yes, I'm here as well. Okay, Mr. Chairman, councillors, I'll take my report as read. Just a couple of little points. There was a bit of discussion previously about the Harriet truck wash, and there's a little bit more on it in item 2.1, and there's been a delay due to I think just delays in the delivery process of the biocords, which are a key ingredient for the truck wash. So once they've arrived, they'll be installed, and then it'll take them a few weeks for the growth to occur on the biocords, then to start doing the reduction in nitrogen that they're supposed to do, which will hopefully then enable the truck wash to provide high quality effluent to Harriet. So that's just a little bit of additional information on the truck wash.
Thank you, Jerry.
But everything else is pretty much as read there. Obviously, there's a few delays taking place due to having had 5 weeks on hold, but yeah, everything is ramping up again.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Anybody? Or are we all questioned out? Councillor Finch.
Thank you. My question was going to be, what actually are the biocords?
These are, it's a little bit like the bioshells that you may be aware of went into Kaitangata and Harriet, and they are a medium that algae and grows on, which soaks up the nutrients and nitrogen in effluent and hopefully turns it into inert products that are acceptable in the system. So it's just something that's eating what's the bad stuff out of our effluent.
So what type of thing are they made of?
I understand they'll just be a plastic type medium.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Because it's part of their plant and not ours, we haven't paid too much attention to it.
Councillor Phelps.
Yeah, I'll just through you, Chairman. Do we have a date? I know we've had COVID and so forth for 58 Clyde Street on the demolition. It says where it can be resumed. Is that level 3, 2, 1?
It can be resumed as soon as the contractor has provided his health and safety updated program to show how he will maintain social distancing and everything else. I'm also aware that contractor has a whole lot of other works that have been delayed, so he's probably fully utilised, but we're trying to get a new program out of him. It could start any day.
Thank you.
That's it. We'll go back to page 14 for the recommendation that the Service Delivery Committee receives the Capital Delivery Update Report. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Ludeman, seconded Councillor Foster. All those in favour, push your buttons. Oh, another jackpot. Well done. Now we'll move on to, I think it's the last item number 5 on page 17, which is the Infrastructure Strategy Update. Greg, are you there, mate?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Where are you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Right. So I'll just pass it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. I'll take my report as read and be happy to answer any questions you might have about it.
Councillor Finch. No, you're not there, Councillor Finch. You're gone. Councillor Sutherland.
It's just about the project manager community plan and implementation vacancy. What are they actually going to do, and how different is it going to be from what Aileen does, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The additional resource was requested by the executive, and the idea was to supplement the work of Aileen, and in recognition of the increasing number of community plan implementation projects that were occurring.
Steve, I see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, if I could just continue that.
Sorry.
The decision on that role has been held up pending a review of that appointment, or recruitment, I should say, until council meets on the 14th.
Right, Steve, have you got something to add to that?
Sorry, Bruce. Before Christmas, we had to rush down one night, and we had to put signage and things like that. We've never seen any of it. What is actually happening with that, please?
It's just signage on the wayfinding around Clutha.
Yeah.
Right. That project is requiring significant collaboration with ORC, who take issue with anyone doing anything on their flood banks without their approval. We are now advanced those discussions with ORC to the point where ORC have suggested a bylaw change to enable the track and the signage to be placed onto the footpaths in a manner that's acceptable to them in terms of ensuring the integrity of their flood banks is retained. So we conducted a trial with ORC, and we're continuing that collaboration with them, with the intent that that then could progress. In the meantime, we are progressing the design of the signs, and so that work's going on in parallel.
Thank you.
Steve, you got your hand up there as a...
Just through you, Mr. Chairman, just to add to Gregory's comments, there was recognition that we weren't making sufficient progress on the community plan projects. There was also recognition that a significant reason for some of that was that there were personal medical issues involved. And prior to the COVID lockdown side of things, this was an arrangement that would be close to rates neutral, where we were able to work within those medical limitations and still have a community plan implementation manager full-time making progress. So we know, because it's been reported before, that that has had an impact on progress, and that's why that recruitment was going ahead. We've got to a point, though, that before we commit ourselves to actually saying yes to somebody, it is important to match that to the general question around community plan projects, and this is part of the question around COVID impacts, the paper I was talking about. What might be COVID impacts? And one of the COVID impacts might be stopping community plan projects, and that's not just the community hub, for example. It'll be the Milton swimming pool, and it could be all the others, because they're a legitimate question that people have around, you know, what's nice to have and things like that. So it just made sense that when you make a call on the 14th, one way or the other, if you confirm the community plan projects, because don't forget, we've got Lawrence happening, Kai Tangata is happening, you know, those things are still happening, and we still needed to be moving on Kaka Point, which is, sorry, not Kaka Point, the Catlins. So there's no doubt that there is projects out there that we need to be doing, because you quite rightly have been chasing us up for not making sufficient progress. But at the end of the day, you'll need to make a call on that as part of your 14th of May decisions, and so that's why we've held it up. Should you confirm it and say we're still proceeding with our community plan side of things and those projects, then given the situation as I was aware in terms of some medical constraints, that it made sense to go down this pathway of the recruitment. That's all. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Jules, I see your hands up. Do you have something to say there, or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. I just actually forgot to mention my report, and it actually fits in the infrastructure strategy section, is that we are in the process of preparing a submission to the Regional Council on their plan change that is due on the 4th of May. That is around, it is primarily around dealing with mining rights for water takes, but our water takes will be caught up in that for any new applications as well. They have a limited time frame. So we are working with the other TLAs around Otago to look to do a joint submission from all the TLAs about trying to ensure that community water supplies have some additional protections, and we're hoping they won't necessarily be subject to the same time limits as all of those mining rights. So we've got some planning staff doing some work on that and preparing, coordinating with other territorial local authorities, the other councils around Otago to prepare that and get that submitted. So just happy to, advising you of that, and happy to answer any questions on that specific issue.
Thank you very much. Councillor Finch, are you back with us yet?
I surely am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes, sorry.
Goody good. Okay, so on page 19, number 9, you've got Clutha toilets and a quote has been received for the demolition. Are they going to be demolished beside the town hall before there's any others designed and going in the middle of the main street of the new property we bought to put the toilets in?
Sorry? I would think that demolition is for that the building, isn't it? You know,
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the demolition of the Clyde Street property, is that what we're just talking about? That's been addressed in Jerry's report.
Yeah.
Right, so it's actually not the toilets because it's got Clutha toilets for demolition of existing buildings. So it is the actual building that we've bought for to put the new toilets in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That answers mine.
Councillor Ludeman.
I just want to ask the question on the Clutha bridge entrances, working to address issues identified by NZTA. Can you expand on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the NZTA took exception with some of the proposals we had for the entrances. In part, we were proposing a steel plate, an oxidized steel plate. You've seen these used elsewhere. They objected to it on the basis of weight, and yeah, we're still working with them on that because we don't understand the weight issue, given that it's not on the bridge; it's the bridge entrances. So we're continuing to work with NZTA on what options can be acceptable there.
No, thank you.
Councillor Finch, have you just not put your hand down, or have you got something more to say?
Sorry, didn't put it down.
Good. Well, if that's it, let's go back to page 15, was it? Or where we have page 17, sorry. We have a recommendation that the Service Delivery Committee receives the Infrastructure Strategy Update Report. We have a mover in Councillor Ludeman and second Councillor Finch. All those in favour, please push your button. It's unanimous. Sorry?
Thank you.
So we'll call that an end to that meeting, and sorry it took so long. If we'd done that other one, what is it? Regulatory and policy, we would have been finished ages ago. Over to you, Bruce One.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We'll have a break, I think. I notice some of you are fidgeting around in your chairs, so perhaps we'll come back at 5 minutes long enough, or come back at 10 to 4.
10 to 4. That'll give us time to make a cup of coffee and have a biscuit.
10 to 4, big buddy.
We'll do that. Right, 10 to 4.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, according to my clocks, it's 10 to 4 now. Can people just put up their hand just so I know who's in attendance? So if you're there, can you just put your hand up?
What, on the screen?
On the screen would be good.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got enough for a quorum anyway. So nā mai haere mai, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi mahana kia koutou katoa. So welcome to this meeting of Regulatory and Policy Committee. And we'll start off, well, welcome to the Mayor, councillors, staff and the press. I don't think we've got any public in attendance, but do we have any apologies? I'm not aware of any. Have any declarations of interest or any urgent business? None declared. So nobody in public forum. So item number 1 is the manager's report, and if Ian's available, if he could speak to his report, please.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's not much to really say. The report just summarises the events of the last 4 to 6 weeks, which have largely been that the regulatory services, the bulk of the regulatory services have generally been suspended, and the last week or two just gearing up to get back underway under level 3. The activity for us is pretty much back to normal, aside from the various health and safety issues that we need to confront when we've got inspectors working out in the community, and our own staff who are based in the Rosebank office. So apart from that, I'll just take it as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ian. Anybody got any questions? Mayor Cadogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ian, just had it back from builders now that they're back at work and actually wanting to physically view plans, but they're not able to get the paper plans because of the contact issues, and a lot of them aren't on the files that haven't been scanned yet. Is there any way that we could work our way around this so that the builders can get to physically see the files?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, look, there's nothing to stop them putting a request in for us to scan relevant plans and email them back out. And we would do that if it was a formal Lagoima request anyway. So it may take a little bit of time for us to get organised to do it, but there's nothing to prevent us from doing that if a builder has a specific request for a specific set of plans from a property.
Perfect. That's a perfect working system. Thanks.
I've got Councillor Kennedy next.
Just a question on all the food places and outlets around regarding with the COVID shutdown and everything. Was there anything put on to council extra for checking out that all places were still compliant and up with the standards?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there's no additional expectations on council. We simply run the normal food and verification process, and we're using our environmental health staff.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Cowie, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon, Ian. My question regards, since the start of this lockdown, it's the southern cases, specifically the Clutha District Council, the number of cases of COVID, and it's been 5 all the way through. So I just to ask your comment on that number, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that's the number confirmed to us as the number of cases of COVID-19 that have, had the disease and then recovered from the disease from the Southern District Health Board. So far as we're aware, in fact, that figure does include West Otago. If you included West Otago, that would mean that there would be 6, from what I understand. But those figures come from the Southern District Health Board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can Councillor Kennedy and Councillors Kennedy and Cowie please put their hands down? And Councillor Graham, you have a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, Ian, but just a comment on the situation reports. Yeah, very helpful. Well done, mate.
Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate those comments there too, that it was good to get those updates from the OC, and I'd just like to thank you, Ian, and staff who are involved there in keeping the place going, carrying out the essential services, and also performing the working in the community too when they weren't able to work at council. So that was very much appreciated. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you. Just through you, Mr. Chair, just to signal councillors that the SITREP requirements, I think, are changing from next week. There's going to be a slightly different frequency, and we are going to be doing a little bit of qualitative reporting from next week on. So I think they're reducing down to 3 times a week, with a little bit of descriptive material around some of the work that particularly the welfare staff are doing. So just a signal that you're not going to see them as often from next week onwards.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'll get Councillor Graham to lower his hand.
No, I actually want to just say something.
Yes, you're welcome.
About the likes of the pool staff doing Meals and Wheels and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if it was in the paper, but that's sort of thing that the ratepayers probably need to see. That you know, that they're not just gone home and doing nothing. That if they can't work from home, that they're actually out there helping. So it's quite positive, really positive. Okay.
Yes, and that also applied to service centre staff in our local communities who were available and who people did contact as well. So council was well involved throughout the whole process, despite what 1 or 2 headlines might have said in some of the farming magazines around. Okay, at this time I'll get you to lower your hand, Councillor Graham, if you've nothing further. And if there's nothing further, no further questions or comments on the Group Manager's report, I'll ask for a mover that we receive that. And sorry, I was a bit slow in seeing, I think it was Councillors Sutherland moving and Councillor Payne seconding that. So I'll take those as the movers and seconders. So all those in favour, please say aye, or raise your hands. And those, that looks like that's carried. And anyone against, lower your hands now. All good. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2 on page 6 of the agenda. And this is the Strategic Planning Manager's report. And I think we've got both Larissa and Mike in attendance. So who's going to lead? Yeah. Larissa? No, see you, Larissa. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I've come to you today with the backdrop of Lawrence Main Street, taken 5 years ago during a very well attended Anzac Day service, in case you're wondering what the backdrop is. Yeah, we have Mike here with us as well.
Welcome, Mike.
The policy team's been busy working from home since the COVID lockdown. And I might just mention that Mike and I have 8 children between us, but I'm sure his are much quieter than mine. We would like to take the report as read. It's an update of our activities since the middle of March, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councillor Payne, you have a question.
Oh, congratulations, Larissa. I never knew you and Mike were a couple.
It came out all wrong, didn't it? He's got 5, I've got 3.
So, Councillor Payne, was that your comment?
It was. Yeah.
I don't think we'll put that in the minutes. Mayor Cadogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To either Larissa or Mike, I know quite a few councils have had concerns around the timing of the submissions and how right at the moment COVID has wiped over the top, and they're actually considering going back and redoing the submissions so that you pick up the flavour of COVID. It would mean that you run the extreme risk of not fulfilling your time restraints, meeting your statutory deadlines, but a lot of councils are doing it. Has there been any consideration? And I'm just every day getting bombarded, particularly from farmers that have read Cameron Baggery's report on how asleep at the wheel we are, and just wondering what our consideration is to our timelines and whether you felt that the submission process, which I did feel the submission process was covered enough, but definitely there's concern out there around COVID.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure that Steve will possibly have some comments to add to this. There's been a lot of very careful consideration across the sector about annual plan and annual plan setting. There will be a paper that will come to you as part of your annual plan decision making, outlining the impacts of COVID that Steve will be leading and preparing for. In terms from a legal point of view, there has been careful consideration given to that. Councils like ours that went out a bit earlier and finished their consultation as COVID was gearing up within New Zealand, from the guidance that we've been given by Solgan, if you are making significant changes to your annual plan, it may be that you should consider reconsulting. Although, if it is reducing expenditure and reducing rates changes, then you wouldn't expect that you would reconsult on that. But yeah, we'll be looking at this really closely and bringing good information to you for your 14th of May meeting, so you can consider all of those aspects.
Are there any further questions or comments on the report? Steve, Mr. Chief Executive.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I suppose the point maybe as Worship was making was a question about whether or not we would include as any options an option to restart the whole process, and as a result of those sorts of submissions, including the late submission that I think people have just received as well, asking that type of question. And just technically, I know that they were also discussing that it didn't necessarily mean that you were going to be technically in trouble if you went over. There are ways about it, but it wasn't our intention, unless you give us other directions specifically, because we have done it before COVID sort of started, to propose that as an option.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just as an aside note, some of the considerations and some of the things that you may see coming through, and this will be part of what's considered by councils across the country, is that, say, for example, reducing operating expenditure and reducing capital expenditure can directly and indirectly lead to job losses within an area. So there's a lot to weigh up and balance, but we want to make sure we bring you good information so that you can have that debate.
Cadogan, did you have something you wish to add?
Yes, I did, please. My honest feelings around the consultation were that the contentious issues we got were not contentious, but any issue in the consultation period, because consultation is only one component of the decision-making process, I felt that I'd got enough directive from the public. It's just real weird timing that I've been bombarded on a daily basis by so many people. How many late submissions have you received, Larissa?
There's been 2 that have come in that will be included with your information, and they'll come in during the last week.
Right, that's surprising. That's good, actually. So they're just banging off at me.
And apologies, one that I see was emailed through to councillors direct as well.
There was a directive given from a certain group to just basically bombard mayors. I know all the other mayors have been getting it as well. So obviously, I'm getting hit by a skewered late consultation. That's good.
Councillor Graham, you had your hand up there.
Yeah, it wasn't so much a question about this, but I thought the meeting was just about finished. But when we go into level 2, do we go away from Zoom meetings? Do we have the normal council meetings when we get into level 2?
Who's prepared to answer that one?
I can answer that. Level 2 does provide for public meetings, which is public council meetings. There are still some rules attached to it, but it does allow for that. The legislation, I don't think, was time dependent, was it, Larissa or Mike? Meaning that it still exists, which means that you can still have a combination of virtual and personally attended meetings as well. And that's probably where we're going to go anyway in the future.
I was pushing for the council meeting on the 14th, Steve, to have a hybrid that within the limitations of the numbers, we would have councillors actually present up at the council chambers, and that new TV would bring a decent size of the ones that aren't there up on it. So I think it was something like yourself, the note taker, and one other person plus 7 councillors was the most that we could have at the present.
Yes, Your Worship, but it wasn't specifically in accordance with the local government instructions, but I have already told the EOC team that we are going to be able to, that we will intending to run it as a workplace in that side of things. But I will say that it wasn't technically in accordance with the specifics of the wording of it, but we are going to treat it as a workspace with the appropriate rules for a very limited number of people.
Yep.
I just, sorry. Did you make it open? Oh no, put your hand down. Can I just say, in relation to that late submission, which I presume we all received with the cutting, the comments from Cameron Bagri, which I'd seen earlier in a farming newspaper anyway, that made me very angry. That I think Cameron Bagri must have been in a very opaque bubble, actually, because councils were well involved with a discussion in zero rates. It's something that's been considered. They've been looking at cuts to elected members' remuneration. There's been a lot of discussion about how we can reduce the impact there, and that article just was completely ignorant, actually, and it's fueled perhaps some feedback from the community that wasn't warranted. So I think we should strongly resist those comments that Cameron Bagri made. And it seems rather ironical to me that somebody who wasn't deeply involved with the banking sector for a long time it comes out and makes comments like that when we've seen no sign from the banks really that they're prepared to step up and take wage cuts, salary cuts, or say they'll hold their profits to to last year's levels. So that really disgusted me, actually, that statement. Councillor Finch, would you like to, you've got
Yes,
something?
please. Yes. When was the email sent to us all, Larissa?
I can check that for you. Just from what I did see, it looked like it had all councillors in it, but it may not have been the full extent. I see that the person had emailed it into help desk and had also put a number of councillors' emails in the, I could see that in the address field, but yeah, I didn't triple check that all councillors had actually got that, but it will certainly be coming through to you as the late submission information for you to have a look at.
29th of April, councillor, at 9:51 a.m.
And the article also was in the Farmers Weekly, which I presume you would have received, Councillor Finch, anyway. I think it was the 17th of April.
Thank you.
That you'll see that. Mayor Cadogan.
Yeah, I'd just like to fully support your comments, Bruce. The opening comment that local government's been asleep at the wheel shows how detached Cameron Baggery is with the civil defence and our normal workings, and that actually the group's gone above and beyond. But I think we can take heart from the fact that we should never have to take moral guidance from a banker.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah. Has anybody got any other comments? Any comments on the what should have been perhaps one of the major things is our boundary redrawal of the electorate boundaries. No comments there. I'll just make one comment. Now that we're spread over 2 electorates, perhaps that we'll have to use that to our advantage, in that we now have 2 MPs whose ears can twist in the future. So just bear that in mind. In some ways, that's a bit more work having to deal with two MPs, but then again, it might give us twice the power we have in Parliament if we can get to 2 MPs. Seems a bit crazy just how that's been withdrawn, with cabins going all the way being covered from Queenstown rather than from somewhere in Southland. So if there's nothing further, there's the motion on page 6 that the committee receives the report titled Strategic Planning Manager's Report dated the 30th of April. I'd like to have a mover for that, please. Councillor Graham's moving. The second, Councillor Foster. If there's no further discussion, I'll put the motion that we receive the report. All those in favour raise your hands digitally and electronically. That looks to be carried unanimously. And if there's nothing further, as we have no further actually, I'll declare the meeting to have concluded. Thank you very much for your attendance.